Hello, everybody. Welcome once again. Yes, it's that time, wherever you are, to another installment of Rebel Without Applause, the Bill Kalmanson podcast, coming to you from where it always does, that being my television studio apartment right here in the Wood of the Holly, under the sign overlooking the COVID-addled, post-apocalyptic land of law, enchanted though it may be. And today I have a very special guest. He's a friend. He is a fellow merchant of mirth. By that I mean comedian, a national headliner, and a veteran of the stand-up wars. You've probably seen him on The Tonight Show, either with Johnny or with Jay. He's open for everybody in show business, and he's here with me tonight. We're going to break it down joke-wise and show business-wise and who the hell knows what-wise. He's here tonight. Welcome, Mark Pitta.
Now, Rebel Without Applause, that's a takeoff on a James Dean film, is that right?
Yes, Nicholas Ray directed it. It was in the 50s.
As opposed to Bill Kalmanson, East of Kalmanson.
East of Kalmanson, west of the moon. Yes, right, east of Eden. God,
I'm just naming the three James Dean movies.
Right, oh, good. You know, one of the things, I'm here with one of the great trivia mavens of all time. I saw your last post on Facebook, and it was the Psycho 60th anniversary shot in the San Fernando Valley, and I'm like, where is that? Like, what corner?
That was in, I think, that was around Burbank, and I just did the research and found out that's the address of where, I'm blanking on her character name.
Janet Leigh, right?
Crane. But Janet Leigh, but her name was Crane.
Right.
Anyway, it's where she goes and gets the used car, trades her car in for another car. I love these locations of movies and going to see how much they changed. I just was blown away that it was still a car dealership.
It was a different business, though, right? It was totally different setup.
Oh, the buildings are always a little different, but the structure is usually the same. But it was a used car lot. It still is. That's what I mean. That's what's funny to me.
That's what I love about noir movies, because it's all LA locations, and they're driving down these streets, and you go, oh.
Right. And Psycho is such a Universal Studios movie. There's only two outside locations. The car lot, and then when she is falling asleep on the side of the road. That's the only two times she's not in a studio.
So she's still in here. That's way before she gets to the hotel, obviously, when she's...
Right. And even the Arizona stuff is rear projection and all that,
Yeah.
But yeah, you're right. There is probably some Arizona stuff. You're right. Wasn't going to go to Arizona.
Yeah. Well, you're close. I mean, you're in Vegas now. What's Vegas like in viral Vegas?
It's odd because, I've been doing stand-up 39 years, and if this means I can't do it anymore, I'll never hit 40, which we all like round numbers. But I don't think it's looking good. I'm not a big fan of the drive-in movie theater shows because I don't think honks are going to replace laughs.
They're doing it in drive-ins now, so are people in their cars?
Yes, I've seen a few of those. And then I just saw a photo that they're going to take the Magic Castle and work their parking lot into one of those shows. So people are trying to put a Band-Aid on this, but it's like, no, we're all in intensive care still.
Yeah, I mean, they say laughter is, the most healing thing, but right now being in an enclosed club, shoulder to shoulder with people barfing little COVID BBs into an enclosed space is probably the most toxic thing you can imagine. So
I guess people think hey, if you get a gig, go do your gig. No, you don't understand. 5 months of not being on stage, it's like I wouldn't even know my act.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
I wouldn't know my segues. I wouldn't know. I would be... You have to work. You have to get, we have 39 years of stage time, and that is atrophied if you're off for like 3 weeks.
It's like
5 months.
Yeah, it's like being a prize fighder if you're not, in the ring.
Oh, you don't work the muscle, yeah.
And if you're at 39 years, that means you're 1 year away from the pension, right?
Oh, yes, the comedy pension. Remember when Bud Friedman, he did try to get a health insurance just for us. We tried to unionize, didn't we?
Yes, the stand-up comedy labor movement story is not going to be up there with like Eugene V. Debs and...
No, we didn't have a Jimmy Hoffa, so...
Yeah, in the course of, let's say, the 40 or 39 years of our little stand-up journey, we have seen like when we started, it was like the generation of Johnny was sort of presiding over the comedy universe. There were still the living legends of, the 40s and 30s, and Milton Berle and all those guys were still.
And I'll stop you right there, because what does that tell you? It tells me that back then I was thinking, I can be doing this for a long time. Because look at Rodney, look at Jack Benny, look at these guys, and they're still funny. And I thought, this is a great profession. And now I'm 62, and I hadn't stopped until this thing. But Jack Benny had a great joke the other night on Johnny Carson. And Johnny set him up perfectly. He goes, Jack, I know you're not really worried about age. I mean, you're up there in age, but what's your philosophy? And Jack Benny says, Mark Twain once said, not to me. That's just like, it's just, I love smart jokes. I feel sorry right now for comedians who've been doing it about 3 years and are finally getting their foot in the door. And now it's just, there's no place for them to work.
Oh, yeah. Well,
we're all kind of lucky that we did it for so long.
I drive around LA still, and to go to West Hollywood, where I go all the time, and my dad lives, I got to drive by the Laugh Factory and the Comedy Store, and then I'll probably come home on Melrose and look at the Improv. And it's like, I don't know, the closest thing I can compare it to is like Bodie.
It's starting to look really dreary. And when something's dreary, what do you need? You need laughter, and we're not even allowed to do that.
Yeah, well, I'm doing a show every other night live.
I do a show weekly, and it started to be just Mark Pitta for 5 minutes at 8 o'clock, just for my fans. But last night's show was 25.
Good.
I think we're all doing it to just combat the demons.
Yeah.
The demons for me is being idle. That's a bad thing.
I realized they had to close all the gigs on Earth for me to find mine, which is right at the foot of my own bed. And literally, I have been doing it every other night from 8 o'clock to 9 o'clock since right around the end of March.
When I'm making dinner, I'll put you on. And it's just kind of, you saw me, I put the iPad on.
Oh, that was hilarious. That was my favorite photo. I was like, I showed people that. Look at that. I'm on somebody's iPad on their kitchen.
Now, how does that make you feel, really?
It
was worth it, that somebody's watching.
It's all in the doing is fun, but it doesn't feel any different than like right now. Just I'm alone and I'm doing this stuff and I'm playing music and I'm reacting to the people.
Do you check the analytics? Because like when I do my show, it says like 135 views, but that doesn't say they watched the whole thing.
Yes, they could have gone, oh, I hate that guy.
Why is he fucking hard?
Yeah, but no, I don't get too deep into the analytics.
Did we swear? I just swore.
Yeah, no, it's fine. Right? It's, this is, I'm on the explicit.
Woo!
Yeah, but, I don't.
No, we have to click. When I put something on YouTube, you have to click that it's not made for kids.
Right, you have to, because
but I don't know if it's worded weird because I'm thinking, wait a minute, there's nothing offending in this video, but it wasn't made for kids, so I don't want to check that box. It's not written properly.
Yeah, well, you could be mature and adult and not necessarily use, language that's. Yeah, so I don't really know what that means.
I don't either.
What's Vegas like now? I mean, the Strip, is it just like...
It's pretty lonely out there. I mean, it's the entertainment capital of the world, but all you can do is gamble at every other table. It's the weirdest facelift you've ever seen. So
there's 3 people I want to run by you, or and talk to me about them. George Foreman, Tony Randall, and Mark Pitta, an unforgettable show business triple threat. Talk to me about that combination.
You're naming the 2 guests that were on the Johnny Carson show when I was on, obviously.
Correct.
And I just had my 30-year anniversary last month. And Johnny Carson is on the Antenna TV at 7 o'clock every night. It's fun to watch. I loved watching the old ones from the 70s because that's when I was in high school watching it. So that's when the seed was planted. And the fact that he was still on in 1990 when I was ready, it's amazing achievement. But there is no such thing as that kind of show anymore. I don't know how people get traction because you can't become a star anymore on television, really.
No.
You can with the internet, but as far as I got to do that show, that doesn't exist anymore.
Remember the conversations, like if you were in school or something, did you see that guy last night, what he said?
God.
Oh, my God.
Yeah,
did you see what Rickles said? Or somebody you'd never seen or heard of before? That's a conversation that I think ended with Johnny. I don't think that went
I used to walk to school, and I hook up with my friend Dan, who lived a couple blocks away, and all we would talk about was what we saw last night. And I'm talking about high school in the 70s, so it's like I'm watching Johnny Carson till 1 a.m. and getting up for school at 7.
Yeah.
So that's how much I love Johnny Carson, and the fact that I did his show. Tony Randall, I only got to meet briefly, and George Foreman, I didn't get to meet at all. But Tony Randall was responsible for fucking up my head when I was a kid.
In what way?
I watched a movie that George Powell made called The Seven Faces of Dr. Lao.
Right.
And Tony Randall plays 7 characters, and one of them is a soothsayer, and he's giving this woman her fortune, and she really wants to know, and he goes, all I could do is tell the truth. When you die, no one will come to your funeral. It's as if you never existed. I'm like, I'm 6 going, what?
I actually worked with him once. I did a TV series or a guest part on I forget, was it one of those shows that he was on, a sitcom in New York City before I moved out to California, and I had this cool picture of myself in a Jets jacket. I was playing a thug or something, and I just like one line, and with Tony Randall, and it was a little.
That guy, he was a great executioner of comedy. That guy knew where to hit his mark and use his voice. And there's one of my favorite movies is Everything You Want to Know About Sex, But We're Afraid to Ask by Woody Allen, where he's the guy in charge of the brain. And they're trying to get the guy laid.
Oh God!
And they're looking through these like periscope, like they could see her, and she's talking about Norman Mailer, and Tony goes, "I don't think it's going to happen." She goes, "I'm a graduate of NYU." She goes, "It's going to happen." Just the way he is. The way he is.
You know.
Excited. And then Burt Reynolds has the best line. He goes, "We're going to ball her right there in the car." And he doesn't like, Burt Reynolds, we're going to ball it right there.
When I think back of the first generation of the Woody Allen movies and the sheer delight, I mean, literally, like, I can't recall going to movies anymore and just like cracking up.
Laughing, yeah.
Just like, I mean, you'd be exhausted after some of those movies. Everything You Want to Know About Sex, Bananas, God, Love and...
You know what? The only movie that did that recently, and of course I'm not in a theater watching it, so I have to hit pause. I was laughing so hard. And that was What We Do in the Shadows.
I didn't even see it.
By the guy that did Jojo Rabbit.
Oh, that was a great movie.
Oh, no. This is better.
Now, I got a question for you because I was just looking at your page there and you had a picture of you with Woody and you were holding a photograph and I'm going, what movie is that from? I couldn't see it well enough.
That's my favorite story of all time.
I want to hear it.
The first movie that Woody Allen ever directed was Take the Money and Run.
Right.
And if you watch it, there's no landmarks in the movie, but it's all shot in San Francisco. He uses Mission Street for the parade scene. He uses Golden Gate Park, but he never shows the Transamerica building or the bridge. So it's very just, benign. But that's where he shot it. So I'm watching it in a retro theater one day. I'm in high school at this point. And there's the famous scene where he tries to rob the bank and they can't read his note. What is apt natural? He goes, no, it's act. What is this? I'm holding a gub. No, it's gun. It's a robbery, And they can't. Well, you'll have to get this note notarized by our vice president, And then he goes to the vice president. The vice president goes, no, that's a B. That's a gub. And everybody's arguing about what the note says, and he can't rob the bank. Well, my next door neighbor, who I didn't know until that moment, he was an actor when he was a child. Like, he was in Our Gang comedies and things like that. Well, he still had his SAG card, and being shot in San Francisco, he answered the open call, and he gets to play the vice president, and he actually ended up with the gub note in his hand in Woody's writing. And when I talked to him about it, he showed me the note, he showed me the sides of his script, and it's legit. And when he passed away, I convinced his wife that he always wanted me to have that note.
And so you had the opportunity to show it to Woody later?
So I had it framed with a lobby card, and it's a beautiful lobby card of everybody pointing at the note. And I show it to Woody, and Woody looks at me and goes, I remember this day very well. I love San Francisco because all the faces are so different. And Woody looks at my framed photo of the gov note and says to me, thank you. And I say to Woody, I'm not giving it to you. I'm showing it to you. And he turns into Woody Allen and he goes, I'm sorry. I just assumed, people give me things. I didn't mean to, assume that you were giving me, It was just great that he turned into that bumbling guy for me.
Well, I guess he had 2 movies in San Francisco, Take the Money and Run, and then,
Played Against
Sam, right.
And the third one is Blue Jasmine.
That was a really good movie. I mean,
now, I saw that movie with Mort Saul sitting next to me, and Mort and Woody are good friends. They talk like once a month.
Uh-huh.
And what did you think? And Mort goes, I liked it better when it was called Streetcar Named
Named Desire. Yes, I mean, it was like, I've always depended on the kindness of strangers.
Yes.
Yeah, you can see where the literary lines go from Woody Allen. He's very heavily influenced by like Somerset Maugham. I can tell who he's reading when he writes some of these movies.
Oh, you know what? If you want to get some insight, and as soon as it was available, I got his memoir called Apropos of Nothing.
I got to get it.
And, whatever you think of Woody, give him a chance. This book, I was laughing out loud. But he says in the book he wanted to be Tennessee Williams.
Yeah, yeah.
That was his favorite of all time. So he's been trying to write Tennessee Williams his whole life.
Right. So you can see that. That's very clear.
That book is so funny. The only thing bad about it is, when he defends himself and he makes a really strong point, he has to do it again 8 chapters later because Mia Farrow friggin' did it again. She waited until her kid was 18 and then. But everybody, that already made their opinion about Woody based on what Mia Farrow. And does anybody want to check to see what Mia Farrow did before Woody? She was like this before him.
Yeah, Frank and
Did you know that when she made Rosemary's Baby, Frank Sinatra didn't like that and they got divorced? Well, when Rosemary's Baby was making all the money, she took a full-page ad in Variety showing the box office receipts for Rosemary's Baby compared to The Detective, which was Frank Sinatra's movie that came out at the same time.
Yeah. Well,
that's a woman that just wants to have the last word.
You know what? I am a defender of Woody Allen without any firsthand knowledge of anything other than what I see. And I see a guy who's been unfairly cornered and blasphemed. And, if you're a pedophile, you do it repetitively. You just don't, it's not a one-off kind of a thing.
No, it's not. And you know what? And when he makes his case, and his case is supported by not only his son, but all the investigators, 6 months worth of investigation, they all said she coached the kids. And there's evidence of that. So Woody defends himself in that, like, I have to. But, people have to get over the fact that him and Soon-Yi have been married for 20 years and are clearly in love with each other. They put 2 kids through college. I think we got to get over the fact of how it all started.
Yeah.
But he has one of my favorite jokes in the book. He says, my wife is in charge of everything when it comes to where we eat, where our kids go to school, where we live. But I'm still the boss when it comes to space travel.
Yeah, I mean, I'm a huge fan. His failures are better than most people's successes in the movie land. Now, you mentioned another comedian who I don't know Woody, but I do know Mort Saul. And the last time I saw him was my little visit when I did the Throckmorton, and I love that guy. How's he doing? I mean, he's like the last man standing. He's got to be over 90.
Well, I had some information on Mort recently, and that Ethan Hawke and Martin Scorsese wanted to get hold of him, and he had a Zoom meeting with Ethan Hawke.
Mm-hmm. I
don't know what it was about. Maybe some research. It has to do with Paul Newman's son as well. I don't know if that has to do with, I don't know if you know this, but Mort lost a child to drugs, and so did Paul Newman, and so did Kirk Douglas, and so did a lot of fucking celebrities have their sons lose them to drugs.
I knew Eric, the one he's talking about.
Yeah, Eric. Oh, my God. Was that a real story about Eric at the Laugh Factory? Was that real?
I don't know about that story, but I first met him in New York when I was kicking around as a comedian at the beginning, and he was kind of like, he looked so much like his father. You just like, there's Kirk, like, whoa.
Yeah.
But you could see that he was troubled, that he was looking for a place for himself in a life. He had a brother, obviously, who's
successful brother,
a superstar in his own right. He's got this legendary father, and he's.
Well, do you know the story I'm referring to?
I don't know.
All right. So he's in the Laugh Factory. He's not doing well. And he says, "Don't you know who I am? I'm Kirk Douglas's son." And somebody in the audience stands up and says, "I'm Kirk Douglas's son." And another guy stands up and says, "I'm Kirk Douglas."
I did not know that.
Spartacus, and I'm thinking,
that's Spartacus. Right. Oh, God.
They totally did Spartacus on him. I'm like, and I was outside. And he came out, I'm like, that guy is wired. He was on something.
Yeah, when I met him, he was sort of like trolling around the comedy clubs, and I think he was looking to be a comedian, or how do I navigate this New World Order. And, so I'm just one of these guys trying to, and I guess that's how I got to know him.
Well, sadly, to answer your question, I don't keep up with Mort because it got to be very hard, and it must be for a lot of people with elderly relatives that, he couldn't see anymore and he couldn't hear. So I can't talk to Mort on the phone. When I call him, he doesn't hear his phone, and you have to scream. And the thing that bonded us is movies, and we used to go to the movies all the time. Well, we can't do that, and age just took our friendship away. I mean, there's no way to communicate with him. And he can't read like the emails, so it's like.
I used to sit with him in his office. He had an office in Warner Brothers. Now this is before he relocated up in the Bay, and I just loved listening to him. I mean, he was just a complete raconteur, great storyteller. He wasn't a great listener. Like if I had something to say, it would be, let's get back to the Kennedy assassination. Okay, go ahead. But it was a privilege to know him, and I did.
Well, he's so memorable in just how he talks. I wish I would recorded everything I ever said to him or he said to me, because the first time I really got to know him was when we worked with Throckmorton. It was Mort's night, and I was opening for him. And he comes back to the green room. So now it's just me and Mort in the green room. I said, "Great set," and Mort said, "What's it all mean?" Like he just stops me in my tracks. I'm like, well, that's a little deep right after a show. The other memorable thing about Mort was just talking to him. I go, "Oh, what's your opinion of Mel Brooks?" And Mort goes, "Low." Because he doesn't like that kind of humor, right?
Yeah.
And the way he phrases things about people in the past, he goes, "Well, most of my friends are on the other side of the ground." So instead of saying passed away, that's how Mort phrases it. It's just very entertaining how he speaks.
The thing that impressed me about him as a comedian was his courage. And it's a different kind of courage. It's not like the wild courage of, like, say, a Kinnison or somebody, but it's the outright balls to tell a story for 15 minutes and the laugh is at the end. In other words, like, if I did that, or, at Tommy T's or some comedy club, say, I would be talked to and probably let go on Wednesday night, like the courage to do that was just very impressive. I don't know who's the last man standing in stand up right now.
Oh, I think it's Mort, because before Mort it was Jerry and Jerry Lewis. And Dick Van Dyke, you don't count because he didn't do stand up. Yeah, I think Mort might be, after we lost Dick Gregory and Jerry Lewis and Marty Allen. Those are the ones that were still going.
I had the opportunity of getting to know Milton Berle because I did a play with him in New York. And this was in the 80s. I hadn't done stand-up comedy yet, but he was, a powerful influence on me. First of all, I idolized him as a comedian, as a kid on TV. I just thought, he wasn't, he's a totally different school than Mort or Lenny Bruce, people that I felt like maybe there's a way I can get close to that. But just for the sheer, he had like Will Clark's swing when it came to telling a joke. It was very pure. And I picked a San Francisco player because I wanted to be sure that the reference was absolutely clear. I love Milton, and I had some great stories with him, and it was after doing the play with him that I decided I think I need to do stand-up comedy. And then he came and saw me a few times, and I had many invitations, which I took up at the Friars Club in Hollywood with the likes of, Milton and Dick Shawn and Jan Murray and Red Buttons. And
now these are names that people are listening to us. Now, do you think 20 years from now, I used to watch Kalmanson and Pitta and Brightwell and Brian Regan.
For me, no, because I am totally obscure. Unless something like I'm sitting on a rocket ship called podcasting that takes off and I'm actually in the capsule. But I think my fate has been pretty much sealed for obscurity. I'm just hoping I get a column inch in Variety when my time is.
But I saw you in True Detective. You're out there doing stuff.
Yeah, I'm kicking around. I'll tell you a funny story. When you drive by the Laugh Factory, when somebody dies, it's like Robin Williams.
Rest in peace.
And make God laugh.
Yeah.
So about 7 or 8 years ago, I had a tough surgery where I don't want to get into the medical part of it, but I had to have a tumor removed from my spinal cord, okay? And
Oh, I had a cyst in mine. Go ahead.
Oh, so we had the same thing.
I
Yeah.
think we both had the same thing because I lost nerves in my right leg.
Anyway, it was a pretty scary surgery at the time.
Yes, it is.
And so I'm laying in the hospital and I'm wondering, well, I don't know if I'm really going to get through this. And I really haven't had any spots in ages. And I never really did the Tonight Show. And, I'm kind of like, yeah, I mean, I didn't really, I know I didn't cross that fame threshold. So I wrote Jamie a note asking, based on the amount of spots that I've had and the fact that I wasn't on the Tonight Show. Yes, I had done some guest stars and I directed a really good movie about stand-up comedy. Would I indeed, if I don't get through this health ordeal, qualify for a Make God Laugh spot on the marquee in the event that I don't get through this?
Guess what? I had the exact same conversation with Harry Basil, who runs the Laugh Factory in Vegas.
Right, of course.
He goes, Mark, if you die, I'll make sure it happens.
Okay, yeah. Like, I was not sure.
Sometimes, like Lotus Weinstock died. I'm like, I didn't know that until I passed the marquee.
Oh.
Sometimes you don't even know until you pass the marquee.
Right. I know.
Now it's, R.I.P. comedy, Make God Laugh, because it's like, there's nothing.
Yeah. So I wrote him that note. I didn't get a response until like after I was fully recovered, So
that's fun. What did he say?
This guy doesn't get a joke. It's like,
I know he doesn't get it.
That would be something like Groucho would write, and it would be in his book, letters, and it was.
Yes.
I didn't hear anything. I have not had.
Coming full circle on that is you asked me whatever you asked me. But
go ahead.
I did want to make one point about how we're trying to combat our demons, and our demon is lethargic. It's just being lethargic is a demon.
Mm-hmm.
Not having a place to show up at 8 o'clock and be done by 11. That's it's just the schedule is ripped out from under. Anyway.
Yeah.
So I do my Tuesday show. I don't hear any laughs. I don't even know if people watching. I guess they comment. Oh, there they are. It's that person afterwards that says, thank you so much for the show. I can't wait for next week. And it's like, shit, I got to do a show next week, because it does help other people.
Well, we've touched on a couple of great comedians, Mort, Woody.
And you mentioned Dick Shawn. And of course, I can't get through this podcast without talking about Robin Williams, who you've spent so much time with. Yes, and there's a new movie that you can see right now on demand called Robin's Wish about what he really died from, which no one knew until after. It's a documentary about his Lewy body dementia. Susan, his widow, is really involved in it. She was on the Today Show a few days ago talking about it. And as they're showing clips and what have you, I noticed there was a picture. I go, oh, there I am at Robin's wedding. I'm like, oh, I'm in this. Okay, good. So thanks to Robin, I have another credit.
And what's the basic thesis of it?
It's to basically tell people what he was really going through, because Lewy body dementia is something a lot of people don't know anything about.
I don't.
Oh my God, it's horrible. And you don't know you have it until you're dead, until they cut your brain open and go, oh, he had Lewy body. But you'll learn in the movie, apparently, I'm only speaking from what I heard on the Today Show, that the fact that Robin could walk and talk at the same time was a miracle, because his brain, he was blessed with something else we don't know. He was just brilliant at, his thought process was incredible. But people with Lewy body dementia could barely get out of bed. The fact that Robin came to the theater one night to watch, and I knew something was wrong, but it's the fact that we're going to find out really what he died from.
Well, you saw those performances that he did at the, in the last chapter of his life over there at the Throckmorton Mill Valley. Was there any clues that, you saw, or that?
The clue was when he didn't want to go up anymore. That was the clue. Mm-hmm. And if you watch his last special, I noticed something, because we didn't know he had Parkinson's either. That combo, Parkinson's and Lewy body, that's a friggin' curse. But I did a little research, and people with Parkinson's spend all their energy trying to look like they don't have it. Otherwise, you look like, unfortunately, Michael J. Fox,
mm-hmm.
who's constantly trying to keep it under control. Well, if you watch Robin's last special, his left arm stays against his side the entire time unless he's gesturing. So he was trying to keep it by its side so he stopped the arm tremor. And no one knew this was going on except his inner circle. I was in the circle across the street from this circle.
You were in the, yeah.
I was in the other circle.
I'll never forget.
Stephen Pearl circle.
Oh, the Stephen Pearl. That wasn't the inner.
Those friends.
Was his wife in the?
I was a little better than Stephen because I saw Robin outside of the Throckmorton. I mean, we'd have coffee look at this. I used to have coffee with Mort Saul and Robin Williams at Pete's in Tiburon all the time.
Yeah.
And you can't put a value on that.
Yeah. So you couldn't have, that wasn't apparent to you. And I mean,
the only time it was apparent was that last time when I called him and said, hey, we have a soldier here that fought in Iraq. He has one leg and a service dog, and he's doing stand-up comedy for this documentary. And so Robin came down. And that's when I thought, oh, fuck, something's wrong with Robin. Because you're talking to a guy, and he's looking at your eyes, and he's not seeing you. It was scary. I told him a really funny story, and I got no response. I'm like, ooh, that usually gets... Oh, I know what it was. We were talking about what's been going on. And I said, somebody just yesterday somebody hit my cat, killed my cat right in front of my house.
He said that.
I said that.
Oh, you said that.
And Robin's response was no response. And that's when I thought, well, a friend would say, oh, sorry to hear that, or something.
Yeah.
He just kept looking, I'm like, oh, this is frightening. And then he kind of popped out of it, which is why, and the only thing I'm proud of is the book written about Robin, for what that's worth. I do think I quoted the last funny thing he said, because he went to the Throckmorton, he was in the green room, and the guy with the service dog, beautiful golden retriever. And I said, my friend Karen Rontowski has a service dog.
Oh, I know her. Yeah.
And that's true. And the job of her dog is to wake her up when she chokes in her sleep, which has happened to her like 3 times a year. And Robin said, oh, a Heimlich retriever. And he got a huge laugh. And I looked at him, and he after he said it, he kind of looked down like he was in trouble, like, oh, I'm sorry, teacher, But that's the last thing I ever heard him say that was funny.
And how long?
The last thing I ever heard him say to me was, take care of Marky. And he's the only guy that ever called me Marky.
Oh, wow.
No one ever calls me that. And if you call me that, I'm hanging up.
Okay, but it's not happening, man. So there's a lot of mystery in the dark
Robin
places.
It's my favorite story of Robin is after shows, And one time I finished the Throckmorton show. Thank you, good night. And I go in the wings, and there's Robin. And he looks at me like, can I play? I'm like, go ahead. Like, you don't need me, And so sometimes he needed stage time, and sometimes he needed to hang in the green room. And sometimes it was nice that he hung out afterwards. And we're all having dinner one night, and it was after a show, so it was like a salad, maybe a dessert, maybe a cup of coffee. I know Robin just had coffee.
Right.
And the check comes, and Robin grabs it. I go, Rob, you don't have to pay for my food. He goes, no, I make a lot of money from the movies I made. And he sees how small the bill was. He goes, oh, this will be on Bicentennial Man.
The movie that he could credit the bill to the movie that didn't make any money.
That it made the least amount of money.
Oh, God.
That's funny.
Yeah. Well, it's nice to be able to have enough movies where you can have some throwaways. Do you know what I mean? Like you've had.
Oh, yeah.
My memories of Robin were walking into the Improv and seeing him kind of lurking and then watching him go on stage. It was like this guy was shot into orbit like John Glenn. I mean, he was put in that capsule and just fired into the heavens. And I'd never seen anything like that where just people screaming the sheer excitement that he generated or that his celebrity generated or the combination of his talent and his celebrity and the moment that he was in and maybe a little cocaine was rocket fuel. I mean, I'd never seen anything like that.
You know what? That's the one regret I have in all the times I've known Robin, I was very conscious that you don't want to insult somebody, but I always wanted to ask him this. When he did his first stand-up special, his first one was at the Great American Music Hall, but the one he did in LA at the Roxy, as he's walking down the stairs, as he's being introduced, he's just wiping all this cocaine off his nose, and it's right there on camera. And I'm like, what was the reaction of that? I never got to ask him, like, did you know that was on camera?
Oh, God.
And it's hysterically funny. I mean, when they replay it on Comedy Central sometimes, it's like, there it is. But you mentioned about being shot into orbit. But picture this. In 1978, and this is before Mork and Mindy, I'm at the spaghetti factory. And in the back, they had a small room, sat like 50 people. And there'd be the improv group called Spaghetti Jam.
Is this in the Bay Area or are you talking about?
San Francisco, right there in the North Beach. Right. And my girlfriend knew about it, and she'd been there already, so she took me there in the front row. And you're watching improv, and I'm like, this is so much fun. And then Robin does like a guest set or something. And Robin comes on stage to applause. And I'm like, who is this guy? Everybody seems to know. So he was already a San Francisco staple before I even saw any shows.
Yeah.
So yeah, I go, who is this guy? And then I took classes with Spaghetti Jam, and then I'm doing improv with Robin 5 years later, and you're like, wow. By the way, Robin always destroyed, and you became an audience member when you were on stage with him.
Yeah.
And back in the day when he was doing cocaine, he's not shy about saying that. When he would sweat, it was just reek. People say he had bad body odor, but it was like a boxing gym because of the cocaine.
Yeah, it's so toxic.
And the hair, it was so hairy. And so I mentioned that to a reporter, and it comes out in the book. But then 20 pages later, there's another story from another comic about his body odor. But I heard Dana Carvey told me that Dennis Miller read it, and he goes, what's Pitta got against Williams here, man? He's all over the place with the body odor. Like, so in print, it may come off bad, but I'm just saying, no, everybody had that story. And, his assistant, Rebecca, I mean, in the documentary, the first documentary, Come Inside My Mind, that HBO made, I mean, there's shots of her just taking his shirt off from his performances and holding it at arm's length and her face the other, she has to throw it in the garbage.
Well, it's just that his life was on rocket fuel with, between the cocaine and the celebrity and the fame and the insane adulation of the audience. Yeah. I mean, I don't know, I don't have that experience because I've basically been scuffling on the, boundary of obscurity. And I mean, I'm very happy in spite of my disappointments. Personally, I don't have any regrets about the opportunities that I may or may not have gotten.
But I'm sure you have a couple of memories of shows where you were just destroying.
Oh, yeah. I did a show with Dana Carvey, who was your good friend, Rosie O'Donnell, and myself at Igby's. And it was a showcase. Brandon Tartikoff was in the audience. Cher was in the audience.
Oh, that's the night Dana auditioned for SNL.
Exactly. I was there. It was 3 of us were on the bill. And it wasn't because I was under consideration. It was just somehow I was the guy. I was there.
I would love to hear your version because I know Dana's.
I don't know. It was like a midweek show, maybe a Wednesday or a Thursday or whatever. And I get to Igby's, which at that time was, one of the happening venues. And it was packed. And it's like, Brandon Tartikoff's in here and this one and all these stars.
Did you change your set once you found that out?
I don't remember. What I remember is I had a fantastic set that in my mind, it was bam, out of the friggin' park. Boom.
Wait. You keep saying Brandon Tartikoff and Dana says Lauren is there too.
Lauren Michaels. Yes, that's what I heard. It was a Saturday Night Live showcase. And I had a great set. And so Dana went to Saturday Night Live. Rosie O'Donnell got a TV series, and I went home.
Well, but they weren't there to see you. They were there to see Dana.
Yeah, and some years later, I bumped into Brandon Tartikoff, and he came up to me. He's a really funny guy.
Hey, here's a question I wanted to ask you about jazz.
Go ahead.
What do you think one of the best jazz scores is in movies?
I would say Sonny Rollins for Alfie. Now, everybody thinks, what's it all about, Alfie?
Oh, no, I know exactly what you're talking about.
Yeah, Sonny Rollins scores it. And
Sonny Rollins.
And then Duke Ellington with Anatomy of a Murder. And I think Duke Ellington's score was the first score of a major Hollywood movie by a black artist.
I listened to a lot of Miles Davis, but did he do a movie before?
Where he composed the score, I'd have to look, I'll tell you, here's a showbiz story. I opened for Miles Davis as a comedian way back when, because he was doing The Palace and he would show up an hour late, and they go, we got to just throw something up there.
Yes.
Just a sacrificial person. And I got a call and I said, yeah, of course I want to be there because I'm going to be able to say for the rest of my life, even though I'll never say a word to him because I didn't, that, I worked with Miles.
When I opened for Celine Dion in Atlantic City, no one knows I'm on the bill. I'm not on the program. I'm not on the marquee. They don't know you're on until you're introduced. The lights go down. They think they're going to see Celine. And it's my voice saying, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Caesar's Palace and an evening with Celine Dion. To open the show this evening. It's like that Albert Brooks bit.
Oh, God.
It's Celine's very special guest. Now, I'm doing the intro, right? I'm doing it in this voice. To open the show this evening is Celine's very special guest you may have seen on The Tonight Show. And I gave myself credits I didn't have. Mark Pitta. And I go out there to hardly any applause. And my first thing I say gets a laugh. And if you get a laugh in a half a second, you at least got them for that.
You're good.
And I come out there, and the first thing I say is, "Thank you for that introduction. That was very well put," so they know it's my voice. And then they're laughing at me, so like, now I have a chance.
Those cold openings are...
Yeah, they're brutal. Kevin Pollak had his favorite intro was, "We're out of the tuna. Here's Kevin Pollak." But I called Kevin one night, and I said, "Just checking in with you. I saw you on Billions.
Mm-hmm.
Good work on Billions." And he goes, "What about The Marvelous Mrs. Maisel?" And I go, "I can't watch that." And he goes, "How many awards do we have to win for you to tune in?" And here's my problem I have with scripted stand-up. It's a person writing what they think stand-up sounds like. Well, guess what? That person on stage never worked those jokes. Meaning they never took it on the road to see what works and what doesn't.
Right.
And it's annoying to me that writers think, "Oh, this is stand-up."
Or
And
this
it
is...
never sounds like stand-up to me when they're doing it. Even in those shows like I'm Dying Up Here, that one, and I'm like, I can't even watch these shows. Scripted stand-up sounds like scripted stand-up.
Well, in my movie, The Solar Opposite, which there was scripted stand-up, but I will say this, the stand-up that I wrote was tested on the road for
That's
you.
what I mean.
These are jokes that I know work. And Chris Maloney, who played the part, I had to, coach him. Yeah. And he actually, to his own credit, I gave him a couple of VHSs, that I had of me. And that guy really just, I don't know. He stole my act. Of course, I wrote it for him, but still, he stole it.
That's funny, but but you know what I'm saying about that?
Of course, I do.
Even Lenny, like you're quoting Lenny Bruce. Is it okay for me to say I never got Lenny Bruce? I mean, or it wasn't my kind of humor? Well, I like silly.
Well, for me, Lenny Bruce, and he's worth talking about. I'm sure Mort has probably shared stuff with you about him.
I can tell you exactly what Mort thinks of Lenny Bruce.
Tell me.
He answers it all the time. He says, everybody makes him out to be this messiah, but he liked drugs, girls, and performing. That's Lenny.
That was him.
He liked to get laid, do some drugs, do some comedy.
For me, when I saw that Dustin movie, Lenny, that got me. Like, wow. Like, that was the first...
No, it's well made, man. Although I watched that movie and I think this movie is about Bob Fosse.
When I saw it,
it's good.
It's good. And it's also like the possibility of a stand-up comedian as a social commentator was like, oh, I didn't know that was a possibility within this form. And then there was books. I guess those were the books that the movie was based on, where you read his monologue. That was
How to Talk Dirty and Influence People, that one?
Yeah, whatever it was, his books, about Lenny and reading his act and losing his cabaret license and the whole struggle and, of course, drugs.
Cops hated him. He made a huge mistake publicly saying on camera he outed the commissioner, chief of police, outed him as a bad person.
Was that in San Francisco, right? Or no?
I don't know where it was, but once you outed, it could have been in Florida. But anyway, San Francisco got arrested. But when he died, I heard a strange thing. I watched this documentary on Sam Cooke.
Oh, what a great!
When Sam Cooke died, they didn't think anything of it. They just said it's just white cops busting a black guy.
A black life that didn't matter.
This is what I heard, that cops like to humiliate black people by removing their pants before they took the photo, their death photo. And people say that's what they did to Lenny Bruce because they fucking hated Lenny Bruce. They took all his clothes off so he'd be naked and be more humiliating for him.
I believe it.
That's what I heard.
I believe it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But why would Sam Cooke be killed with his pants down? It makes no sense.
Now, Sam Cooke, of course, you send me one of the great voices of all time.
Oh, God. And he was an entrepreneur, and he was starting his own record company. It's very clear with the documentary I saw called The Two Killings of Sam Cooke. They killed him, and they killed his possibility of being a mogul because he didn't like how his records were being handled, so he was going to do it himself. And he had power. He had more power than I ever thought. And I think that's why he was killed. Also because he had a big wad of cash and he was throwing it around, and it was a prostitute that, it was one of those things. Hey, one more thing before we go. We were talking about Ethan Hawke calling Mort Saul.
Mm-hmm.
And it's so funny because Ethan Hawke is the only guy that played a pretty good version of Chet Baker. If you've never seen Born to Be Blue,
right,
he plays Chet Baker. And it's finally the Chet Baker story that we could kind of stomach without thinking, oh, they're just, it's a pretty good story.
His was a tragic life, also,
Yeah.
riddled and addled by heroin,
Now, one of my favorite accomplishments, if you want to call it that, is, the Tonight Show, of course.
Mm-hmm.
But I always wanted to meet Burt Reynolds. And I got to meet Burt Reynolds when they had the showing of his last film called The Last Movie Star. It was in L.A. And after the show, I'm walking out of my car, and I see everybody going to this bar across the street, this alleyway.
Uh-huh.
And I go in, and I get a drink handed to me and free food. I'm like, oh, this is the after party. And I just hang out long enough. Bert's at a booth, and everybody's going over to Bert. There's Mary Lou Henner. There's old friends of his, I wait 2 hours, and I sit down next to him. Luckily, as the director was leaving, Adam Rifkin, and I knew Adam Rifkin barely, but I said to Adam Rifkin, could you introduce me to him? Now I'm introduced to Bert by the director. So now I got street cred. And we were talking, as we're talking, a band member comes over and goes, Mr. Reynolds, we're going to be playing My Funny Valentine. I heard you're a Chet Baker fan. He goes, oh, thanks.
Mm-hmm.
And that's when I said, did you see Born to Be Blue where Ethan Hawke played it? He goes, yeah. I go, it was good. They finally got his story out that was different than he goes. And Bert goes, yeah, but they always have to fall back to the drugs. They always have to show him using the drug. And that's when I realized I'm just talking movies now with Burt Reynolds. It was the coolest thing. We were not talking about Bert. We're talking about movies.
I loved him in, of course, to me, Deliverance, and in the football one, the prison, The Longest Yard. And then I saw
All Crew.
Yeah, I just saw one where I forget the title. It was really good on TCM, which is the one channel I watch.
Know it. Just describe it. I'll know it.
He's, a moonshine guy, and he's
White Lightning.
Yeah. Oh, but really takes you.
One.
Boy, I mean, it's what's really great about that, and what's his name is the sheriff, Ned Beatty. Well, the place is so authentic. I mean, you so believe the South, and
the supporting cast is Bo Hopkins.
Right.
It's all those character actors from the '70s that I can give you the names, and you go, who?
Mm-hmm.
Diane Ladd's in it.
Mm-hmm.
R.G. Armstrong. These guys, man, great supporting. But that whole line is like, you know why I'm here, don't you? It's a revenge movie because his brother's killed while Bert's in prison,
and he comes out, right?
But that opening to White Lightning is so it's creepy. It's the music, and he's taking these two kids out on the canoe, and they're gagged and tied, and they just shoot the canoe so they sink. It's like,
yeah. Well, that movie, White Lightning, is a lesson in directing in terms of the authenticity of place and the obligation to create that and make that real. That infuses the whole movie, just like, for example, and it's just on the top of my head because I saw it again recently, on the waterfront. You believe the docks.
Yeah.
You believe the place. You believe the ship holds. If you're an actor and you're on that dock or sitting in that clubhouse with Johnny Friendly, you believe it. You don't have to act because you're in the place. And White Lightning is similarly authentic to its place.
Favorite line is Burt Reynolds goes, only two things I'm scared of, women and the police.
Yeah.
Ned Beatty goes, you try your whole life to hump them both. And then Burt, of course, goes, ha ha. But I always wanted to make Burt Reynolds laugh. And guess what I did, Bill? I did not do a joke that I knew worked. I tested a joke on Burt Reynolds just to make me feel better. And it was a joke I'd written like a couple days before. I said, I'm a comedian for 38 years. And you're the reason, because I used to watch you on The Tonight Show. And Burt said, well, congratulations on being successful so long. And I said, I wrote a joke today. Want to hear it?
Oh, my God. So this wasn't too long ago because he passed within a year.
He passed 2 years ago, yeah.
2 years ago.
This was about 2.5 years ago. I showed him a picture of me and Dom DeLuise. I said, I work with a friend of yours. And he was so sweet. He looked at the picture, he looked at me, and he goes, I miss him. And he said it just like that. And I talked to him about Mort Saul because Burt Reynolds had Mort Saul and his wife over for dinner once. And Burt wrote him a nice letter, and he was nodding the whole time because Mort's story was he was having trouble with his wife. But he had an invitation to go to Bert's. Bert's a great storyteller, and they have a great time. And as Mort put it, I got lucky with my wife that night. But the next day, she was right back to being, troublesome and fighting. Bert gets a call from Mort, and Mort goes, "Can we come over for dinner again tonight?" And Bert, the whole time I'm telling him, Bert's nodding his head. He's nodding his head because I read the letter from Bert.
That's
So
funny.
it was a nice little. I got to talk to him for 5-10 minutes. It was just a dream come true, really. Because when you're a kid, you're very influenced by these guys. I liked his movies. Hey, if you're a teenager in the '70s, Burt Reynolds is your guy
Oh, yeah.
because you want to drive like him.
Yeah. I mean, he was funny and he was authentic. I think he had more talent as an actor, and he got caught up in a lot of the.
Well, it's the Cosmopolitan thing, ruined a lot of it. But you know what? Johnny Carson, to a certain extent, turned his career around in that he started doing more comedies.
Those guys had so much fun.
In Bert's books, and again, he's a great storyteller. His last book told the story of this kid who was in an abused family. His mother was an alcoholic. His stepfather beat him, and Bert took the kid to his father. Actually, he didn't take the kid. He said, "Look, I got this friend, and he's abused really." He goes, "Well, you go ask his mother if it's okay if he lives here." And she said yes. And all Bert's father did was go to Bert's closet and take his clothes, push half of them to one side. He goes, "Okay, that's his half, and that's your half." So Bert took this kid who was in an abused relationship with his mother and stepfather. And years go by, and it's so sweet. The kid, who's now an adult, makes sure he's legally adopted by Bert's parents. And that's only because they took him in, So a lot of good stories.
So that was when Bert was a child then.
A youth, yeah. He was when he blew his knee out in college. He thought he'd never, he wanted to be a football star. He'd rather have been a football star than an actor. And he died before he died. He died at this crash. He was on the operating table and heard the doctor say, "We've lost him." Or nurse or somebody, the assistant. Well, the doctor was, "Let me try something I just read about." And he massaged Bert's heart on the operating table because he was very new at the time. And Bert came back to life. And he knew this because he dated the nurse afterwards. And she says, "Oh, no, we said we lost him." Like, that's how he found out.
Oh, my God.
Well, I just like to end the conversation by saying, go to my YouTube channel, all you listeners. I put up all my fun stuff there.
Oh, yeah.
Mark Pitta. And also buy Woody's book, Apropos of Nothing. If you like comedy, it is one of the funniest books. The other thing he said, his first wife was like younger than him, but she was like at NYU, and she was into existentialism, and she'd have college students come over to discuss it.
Right.
And Woody said, "I got into it with them, it was very interesting." He goes, "But then my wife won the argument when she proved I didn't exist."
I'm just going to end this affirming your own thoughts that he has been unfairly savaged in the Me Too. I don't know if he's even the Me Too. He's not Me Too. He's something else.
He has said he's the poster boy for Me Too.
Me Too sort of suggests, like you're taking advantage of adult women. What's the guy's name? The comedian just got destroyed. Oh, God.
Bill Cosby?
No. Well, but the guy, he's our age, or the redheaded bald guy. You go for the masturbation guy. What's his name? I can't remember his name, but
the masturbation guy.
Yeah, he was masturbating in front of young comedians. Louis C.K. Right. So, that fits
the masturbation guy.
Yeah, it's terrible. Sorry, Louis. But my point is, that's, to me, follows under the Me Too category. Woody is accused of pedophilia.
That's different.
And that's not Me Too. That's a very dangerous accusation against anybody,
I have insight if you want this. It's from Bobby Slayton, and he'd be a better guest to tell, but he has had a dinner with Woody.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know how the conversation went there, but they brought it up, and Woody goes, "I wouldn't be caught dead in an attic." I would never go into an attic. Are you kidding me?
Yeah. He's been.
And when I interviewed Woody for one of his movies, I flew to New York, and all the interviews were on the first floor of the hotel because Woody he doesn't like heights. He doesn't like closed spaces. I'm like,
I don't.
It was pretty funny. Like, you walk in, it was in the lobby, but. When I got to meet Woody Allen for the first time, it was like I was meeting an uncle that I see twice a year because he had 2 movies a year. I was not intimidated at all. But I got to ask Woody, and we'll end on this because this is a great insight.
Go ahead.
I finally got to ask Woody a question I've always wanted to, because sometimes you see his movies and the jokes just lay there.
Mm-hmm.
Like, wow, he just referenced Max Schmeling trying to get a joke. Like, well, no one's going to laugh at that unless they're 80, you know?
I would laugh. Max Schmeling, a great
I
fighter.
know you would get it.
Yeah.
But I said to Woody, do you ever see your movies with an audience? And he goes, no. I said, then how do you get the satisfaction of getting the laugh? And he says, I don't. So he doesn't. After he's done, he moves on.
To me, that's also the beauty of his life, is that there's no intermission between filming and writing. He just gets to work and produce and create, and it's not
like Clint Eastwood.
Right. It's not about result. It's about process, and that's what sustains him. And to me, that is the rarest privilege you can have in show business, and he's deserving of it, but it's still a privilege. And
and because of Mia Farrow, that his last movie we never got to see, called Rainy Day in New York, and I heard that in Europe it was the #1 grossing film. But Mia Farrow, you gotta look where the source. She is so nutty. And by the way, you're going to learn a lot about her in this book, that she treated her biological kids perfectly, and all her adopted kids, she treated them like servants. In fact, one person who did the interview thought the kid was the housekeeping.
Interesting.
Yeah, so that's how she treated. And she just, the Soon Yi story blows you away how mean she was to her.
I will read the book because I love Woody, and he was...
Oh, you're going to laugh out loud.
Mark, I love you, brother. It's so great to talk to you. We'll do it again. And I want to thank you for your time and your life experience and your humor and the whole package. I really appreciate it.
Thanks, buddy.
Thanks, brother. See ya.
See you later.
Bye. So there you have it, folks. Sit down with the great Mark Pitta from Vegas. Thanks again for tuning in. And till next time, namaste, shalom, and aloha. Namah Shaloha.